that's the problem with Tesla. Almost any other company on earth, we could call their engineers, we could call their people and be like, hey, walk us through this, explain how this works, tell us everything. But this is a company that is a complete black box to the public. So good luck with that, Austin. Thoughts and prayers. Hello and welcome back to the Plugged In Podcast, a weekly news show all about the future of transportation. I'm Patrick George, editor-in-chief of InsideEVs.
And I'm Tim Levin, senior reporter at InsideEVs. On this week's show, Tesla's Robotaxi pilot kicks off in Austin, Texas, with a few hiccups. Ford's LFP battery plant is caught up in controversy, and we run down a list of the cheapest EVs for sale in America right now. Spoiler, they are not that cheap.
But it's getting there, isn't it? Yeah. Kind of? Yeah.
Yeah. Slowly but surely, it's getting there, and we'll talk more about that later. But first, how's it going, man? How are things in New York? Is it like 100 degrees where you are?
Yeah. I come to you today from the hotbed of automotive journalism that is my kitchen, because it is too hot to work in my home office room that's upstairs, because my house in the Catskills is 100 years old and I don't have central air. And this time of year when we get these wacky heat waves, like it just becomes like unlivably dangerously hot upstairs. So if you're the kind of person that tunes in every week to, see the dog puke yellow paint of that room and all the bookshelf behind me and all that familiar stuff, sorry to disappoint, but like I have to do it here or I'm going to die. But how's the weather in Northern California, Tim? Let me guess. Nice?
Yeah, everything's good here.
Oh, that's good. Nice.
It's 69 degrees in my house.
Nice.
Yeah, if you pass out, I'll just start doing both sides of the script. So
yeah,
people, that'll explain what happens about 30 minutes into this show.
Yeah, it'll be like a form of performance art. I think it'll be really cool. So yeah, very exciting.
All right. But before we get into our first story, we just wanted to remind you to subscribe to the Plugged In podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And remember that our inbox is open. You can send your questions about the EV world to podcast@InsideEVs.com, and we'll answer the best ones on the show. All right, with that, let's get into it. After years of promises and some delays, Tesla launched its Robotaxi service on Sunday in Austin, and launch might actually be a strong word for what went down.
Yeah, like they're out there, they're doing it, baby, like he promised. Like there's about 10 of them, 10 Model Ys with little Robotaxi graphics out there picking up fares. Invite only for now, as you're going to get into, but like they're out there doing it. It's just been kind of much more of a public beta than a full-blown Robotaxi business launch.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way to describe it. So here's what went down this weekend for people who don't know. On Sunday, a handful of Tesla Model Ys started taking passengers around Austin without anybody in the driver's seat. Basically a Tesla version of a service like Uber or like Waymo. It's invite only right now, with what seems like mainly pro-Tesla influencers and YouTubers getting early access. This explains why a lot of the early impressions we're seeing online are extremely positive. There is a safety monitor sitting in the passenger seat who can stop the car at any time. And this is technically a commercial service, not really a test phase. They are having people pay for it, a flat fee of $4.20, which we can all agree is hilarious if you're 12. Yeah, if you're 12 years old or if you're Elon Musk. That's hilarious.
I just imagine there's a bunch of people in his life when he does stuff like that who are just like have a vested financial interest in being like, oh my God, Elon, you're so funny. Like, thank you for legalizing comedy again. You're hilarious. And it's like, no, this is what happens when everyone in your life like makes money off you and you don't have any friends to tell you that your ideas are bad. Anyway, go on. Speaking of bad ideas.
Perhaps. Yeah. So Tesla finally, like you said, Tesla finally has self-driving cars on the road. This is something it's been talking about for a long, long time, talking a big game about selling you a driverless car. There are the Tesla influencers who say that basically this launch proves all the haters wrong. The market liked it. The Tesla stock popped 10% on Monday morning on top of its already roughly $1 trillion valuation. And then there are the skeptics who will say that Tesla's camera-only technology will never be ready for prime time. There are people who latch on to the kind of mistakes that this is making. Where do you land here, Patrick? What's kind of been going through your mind as this is kicked off? And I guess I'll mention also that the stock popped and then dropped. We don't know if that's maybe some of the big expectations for this launch kind of hitting reality, or it's also some sales numbers coming in this week. But essentially, that big pop that we saw has been erased in the first few days of this week as of Wednesday. Yeah, so where do you land here, Patrick? Between the kind of like influencer glee and the kind of skeptics who are saying that this is maybe a non-event, what's been going through your mind as this has kicked off?
I've watched a bunch of these videos. I've seen the news reports going around. Obviously we haven't sent anyone down there to experience it for ourselves. We debated doing that, but the service being invite only for now kind of made us like hold off on that for a moment. But I mean, so far, just like honestly, I'm not surprised by what I'm seeing. Like this is Tesla full self-driving. Like this is what it is. It works, but it's erratic. It's unpredictable. It does weird stuff. I can't say hallucinates, but we've seen these instances where it thinks it sees something with its camera system, then comes to a very sudden and terrifying halt. Like I've had instances like this in Teslas I've driven, and like I will admit, I was telling our producer this before you got on. Like this is just kind of how it performs. Like it has gotten better. FSD has gotten better over the years. The time I tried it pretty extensively in 2023, and once drove me into oncoming traffic before I seized control. Then I drove it pretty extensively last year. We were doing the Breakthrough Awards in the Cybertruck, and it did a lot better navigating from my parents' house to my sister's house in the Texas suburbs. But it also whacked the curb a couple times. So like this is what it does. It works, but it's not great. So I'm not shocked that the world is kind of being exposed to how this system really works, like on a different level. It's one thing to own a Tesla and experience that and try it, and then maybe decide it's not for you, like a lot of full self-driving owners or Tesla owners do. And then there's the people that like are the kind of Tesla investors or the influencers that are really bullish on this system, that are really bullish on this technology because they think it's what's going to make it the most valuable company on earth. And they're the ones that are kind of very apologetic and very willing to excuse its flaws. Like, look, it's a beta. We're working on it. It's going to get better. This is how it is. But, now like the public is seeing this. Like the public has to deal with this all of the time in Austin. And I'm not shocked. I'll also just say that I feel like the whole thing has been kind of half-assed. Like Tesla didn't even really set up a dedicated portion of its website to talk about the Robotaxi service until Sunday or Monday. And, the lead photo is just a very standard Tesla Model Y stock image with some Robotaxi graphics like kind of put on it. And it's like, I make better graphics like this for InsideEVs. And as Tim Levin will personally attest, I am no graphic artist. And it's like, this is the most important thing, supposedly, this company has ever done. This is the future of the company. Why is it not so much more polished and full of panache and just full force awesome? It really kind of feels like, we just sort of threw it out there. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah, I think like a lot of Tesla stuff, it was a kind of weird launch. Like you're right. You would expect for its most important development in like a decade that they would have pulled out all the stops for this. And I think that kind of speaks to, this is a much smaller rollout than I think Elon Musk has been kind of projecting for years. And
yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's probably a good thing for them to take this slow, to have a safety monitor, to only have a few cars, to have it be invite only. Like this is the kind of stuff that we've seen from other autonomous vehicle companies like Waymo. Like they start this out really slow.
Totally, yeah.
At the same time, it is just like it's kind of jarring when you put that in comparison with what the promise has been for so long. Like for so long, Elon Musk has been saying your Tesla will drive itself. We will send the update that will flip the switch and turn all your cars into robotaxis. You'll be able to add your cars to this fleet. And it's just this like world changing event. And
Yeah.
that's not really what we've gotten here. What we've gotten is a very small robotaxi pilot, which like is a big deal for this company. The fact that they're finally took the driver out, even though it is supervised in some way, like they have this person in the passenger seat when Musk said earlier this year that they would have nobody in the car in Austin. So it's kind of a little bit of a more of a baby step than he said, more of a baby step than he's been talking about for years, but it is a big deal. It's a big first step.
Yeah, it is. I think you're right in that for Tesla and Elon, like the check is due. Like all these years of hype, and he so badly needs a win after just the whole year that he's had that we're not going to recap here, you know. But I guess the technology is just not up to the level where it can deliver on this insane amount of promises that he's made. But I'm not sure it ever could have been. Like there's no way. This has been so hyped up for so long. And you're right. It is remarkable that like a car company is out there doing this. Like, but it's unfortunately it's kind of made a little less remarkable that there's like a lot of robotaxi action in Austin right now specifically. Like Waymo's there. That's the big one. That's still the benchmark. But there's also AV Ride or AvRide. I'm actually not sure how it's pronounced. I'm sorry. It's a new player, and they're running autonomous Ioniq 5 soon. Volkswagen is going to be doing stuff in that city in ID Buzz autonomous vehicles, which I think is pretty cool. So there's a lot of cities in America that are used to seeing these things or the prototypes, the test cars running around. If they had been first to market, if they'd done this like 5 years ago, it could have been a mind-blowing moment, and we would have been more understanding that like, okay, it's small now, but it's going to get big. But it's them doing this stuff with all these mishaps and having to play catch up as well is a really tricky situation.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and then to talk about the mishaps, like I think, have you watched, I know you've been traveling. Have you had time to watch some videos of this stuff
I've
this week?
seen clips here and there. I mean, like one problem I have, dude, honestly, is that like these YouTubers go to these events and like the video they will record is like 2 hours long, and it's like I don't have time for that. Like I have a lot going on in my life right now, so just like these things just need to be a little bit like quicker and like get to the crazy action and not
Yeah,
bury it in the middle of your video where you're touting your sponsors and your referral codes and everything else. So that's my hottest take for you, Tim Levin. The YouTube videos are too damn long. They're just too damn long. And what
yeah.
we're talking about, it's been a long day.
I'll bring us back.
Thanks.
I appreciated that. Like, yeah, you have all these invite-only Tesla influencers that are able to ride in these cars. The thing that these people love to do is to make these super long, uncut videos of them like driving FSD, driving full self-driving, the kind of consumer version of this, or riding in these cabs. And like, so I watched a lot of these videos, and I think for the most part, it's pretty smooth. Like it is a
Yeah.
lot like the full self-driving that consumers get. And like you said, 90% of the time, maybe more, it's really good. Like it's driving around, it basically does what it needs to do. And then every once in a while, it has a pretty erratic mishap that happens, right? And one of the ones that's been going around the internet over the last couple of days is one where basically it's going through an intersection. It's in a left turn only lane, and then it can't decide whether to make the turn or whether to go straight. The wheel turns back
Yeah.
and forth. The thing swerves, and it eventually decides to go straight, which means going into an oncoming traffic lane and crossing over the double yellow. Couple of times, like you said, these phantom braking incidents where it thinks it sees something and slams the brakes. And one thing to note is NHTSA, the federal safety regulator, said that it is already in contact with Tesla about some of this stuff. So like, it has not been 100% smooth. I will say that these are the kinds of things that we've seen with other robotaxi makers too, Waymo driving into wet cement and things like that. All these companies have these kinds of snags when they first start out. I think the big question is like, how does it do over time?
Yeah.
Does Tesla iron out these mistakes? How quickly does it iron them out? Do any of them end up being kind of serious, accidents where they're hitting things? We'll have to see. We know Tesla is like a very risk aggressive company, more
Right.
so than somebody like Waymo, which I think would have done a lot more testing with safety drivers before letting regular people get into this thing.
Yeah, and my mind goes to Cruise last year, which
Right.
had a pretty advanced product. I mean, I used it when it existed. I was pretty impressed with it. I didn't think it was quite the level Waymo was at, but I thought it was impressive. Also LiDAR equipped, unlike these Teslas. But General Motors pulled the plug on Cruise because of repeated safety incidents, including one pretty high profile one where somebody got kind of dragged under a car, at one point. So, but that's GM. Like GM has, I don't even mean this in a bad way. It's just General Motors. Like they have more lawyers than like some cities have people. Like there are probably more attorneys working on staff or on retainer for GM than like live in the Dallas Fort Worth metro area. So like Tesla doesn't operate that way. It just doesn't. Like we're playing it fast and loose, baby. So I don't know if that risk averseness will enter into the equation for them. I have wondered with all these services, Tesla, Waymo, any of them, what happens if one of them kills somebody? And you remember about 10 years ago with Uber, when it was still trying that ended their program too, led to a big lawsuit, kind of set the industry back many years. I pray something like that doesn't happen here too, but like nobody has an answer to that yet, and like, or like safeguards in place to ensure that doesn't happen. That's kind of scary that these are out there and we've still not settled a lot of these questions, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it's inevitable that more stuff like that is going to happen, not just with Tesla, but with all of them. Just like you're on the road for enough miles and accidents start to happen. The question is like, can this industry sort of push past that, or gain a level of trust with the public?
Yeah.
We'll have to see. I mean, what are your other? I have some big questions about like I think this is another instance where more questions than answers from Tesla. What are you kind of looking out for as we look at this for the next, few months, next years? What are you looking out for from Tesla?
I am just going to be watching carefully to see how it interacts with other cars, with emergency vehicles on the road, and with pedestrians and cyclists. Where it is in South Austin, that's just south of downtown, like South Congress Avenue. That's a pretty busy area, to be honest. Like there's a lot going on, a lot of activity. It's a very iconic street in section of Austin, Texas. A lot of famous restaurants and shops are in that area. Parts of it started to look a little bit more like Los Angeles in recent years. I'm sorry to say, but like this is like when you think of like Austin, in a lot of ways, like my mind kind of thinks of South Congress. So there's a lot going on there. This isn't just some like random airport park or something where like nothing is happening, right? I'm going to be watching to see how it does. And if it has incidents or God forbid crashes or something, just to see how these systems work. And I'm also going to be seeing like, are they going to successfully roll this out and expand the area it's operating in and expand it to other cars? Are they going to get customer cars involved too? And I'm also really curious how these cars are going to interact with each other. Like what happens when like a Waymo and a Tesla are somehow like fighting for lane space or a parking space or a pickup spot or something. Like what happens? What happens then exactly?
Yeah, I would imagine they just programmed the Tesla to like scream obscenities at the Waymo.
Yeah, yeah. It just sprays stuff from X, just like the worst stuff on X at it at once or something. I don't know. That's what's on my mind as this progresses. What's on your mind here, Tim?
Yeah, I think it's all the same stuff. It's like, it's all about how quickly can they scale this up? Can they add cars? Can they expand the service area in Austin, add more cities, while doing it safely, right? And over time, like, when can they take this safety monitor out that's in the passenger seat, right? This person right now is able to stop the car whenever it gets into a hairy situation, which we've seen at least one time when that's happened. That's been captured on camera.
Yeah.
They seem to have, one of my big questions is, what the hell is the button that they're all holding? And this is like the question that's been going around on Twitter, is they're all have their thumb hovering over the like door button in the front seat, and it's like, is that a emergency stop button, you know, that they can like, whenever anything starts to go wrong? In that case, I don't know, it's just it's more supervision, right, than they've been claiming they would have. But anyway, yeah, I think it's how quickly can they scale it up? Can they make it safe? And then like over the long term, right, the Tesla thesis is like, we are doing this with factory cars with just cameras on them, no HD mapping of the cities that we're operating in. And like, that's our big edge. That's our big cost advantage, is these Teslas are regular cars. They're not Waymos with like several LiDAR sensors and radars and a ton of cameras on them. And I don't think we can say yet, like there's a lot of experts who think that the Tesla approach is impossible, that it can never yield a safe and reliable system. I think we still can't say that. We're basically just going to have to watch this for the next like thousands and millions of miles that Tesla logs and see if they can build something that's up to the same snuff as somebody like Waymo.
Yeah, and AI too, which is very ill-defined in this application. I think it's like just AI trains it to be better, okay? Like, they're scant on details. And again, that's the problem with Tesla. Almost any other company on Earth, we could call their engineers, we could call their people and be like, hey, walk us through this, explain how this works, tell us everything. But this is a company that is a complete black box to the public. So good luck with that, Austin. Thoughts and prayers. Meanwhile, as I complain about having to live with Texas-like heat in places that aren't Texas, that's what the situation was in Detroit this week. Usually when I go to Detroit for something, I have to wear like my snow armor, but it kind of felt like San Antonio when I was there, thanks to this nasty climate change-driven heat wave that's engulfing most of America. You know, but I'll tell you what else is hot out of Michigan this week, and that's battery news. Yeah.
I always have to be careful when I feel like I've written a ton of headlines that are like, batteries are hot right now, or
like,
you know, EVs are exploding, and I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, but like batteries are hot right now in parentheses, but not that way. No, don't worry. Yeah, thermal runaway is an increasingly rare issue as the technology progresses, which is a really long headline. No, I was out in the Motor City area for a tour of Ford's Blue Oval Battery Park construction site, which is about 90 minutes west of Detroit, in Holland, Michigan. I've never been there before. That project is well underway now. It kind of just looks like a giant warehouse full of mysterious equipment, and it will go online next year. And when it does, this factory will produce LFP, or lithium iron phosphate batteries. When it's completed, it's going to be this giant 2 million square foot, mile-long factory that employs about 1,700 people. And Ford says it'll be the first automaker-owned factory in the United States producing automotive-grade LFP batteries, and that's a really big deal.
Yeah, and I'll jump in to explain a little bit about why LFP batteries are cheaper. That's really the big one. LFP batteries, the materials are way cheaper than your typical nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries, which are NMC batteries. They tend to be longer lasting. They're more durable than the NMC batteries that make up the vast majority of EV batteries in America. The one big sort of caveat or downside is that they tend to have lower energy density. So like you need more battery to provide the same amount of range as you would with these more expensive NMC batteries. But that's changing as this technology advances, and at the same time they're getting cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah, if you're not the type who like lives, eats, and breathes battery chemistries like we have to, like I think of LFP batteries as the four-cylinder engines of the battery world. It's like not everything needs a big V8 or a V12 or a V10. Like sometimes you just need a tough, cheap little bastard to get the job done, and that can like go in anything, including like really affordable cars. Like that's actually like you said, like this is where this is most important is making EVs cheaper for consumer applications and for commercial applications too. So why is this a big deal for Ford? Why don't we have these things here in America now? And the simple answer is China. LFP batteries were actually developed here in the United States by researchers at my alma mater, the University of Texas at Austin. So it's a very Austin-centric podcast today, Tim.
Yeah.
We should just go down there and do it sometime. We'll do it. We'll do it in the back of a Robotaxi. It'll be great. But UT Austin researchers developed LFP batteries in the late 1990s, but U.S. companies didn't really do much with them at the time, and they didn't defend the patents around this technology in China. So Chinese companies like overwhelmingly seized those patents and licenses and ran away with like the production process and the technology for about 20 years. So that's why Ford, to do this factory, has a licensing deal and a partnership with a Chinese company, CATL or CATL as it's sometimes called, to build this plant. And that's what this is. Blue Oval, it's like a joint venture working with CATL to produce LFP batteries, licensing technology. It was born in America, but is now like quote unquote owned by the Chinese. And that's where things get really, really tricky.
Right. So CATL is the largest EV and energy storage battery manufacturer in the world. So why is this a big deal? Why is this partnership a big deal?
Yeah, it's China, man. You know, one day you're making batteries for cool new EVs. The next day your kid comes home with a little red book and a lot of funny thoughts about the merits of collective farming. It's I joke, but like that's the fear here. It's like there's this very widespread fear that like this is an American automaker, quote unquote, getting into bed with, a major geopolitical adversary. And they're like hardcore China hawks on both political parties. Like let's be honest. Like Joe Biden definitely hit Chinese automakers with tough tariffs, and there are tons of Democrats who, are ferociously protective of our industries and fearful of Chinese interference. So there's just a lot of political heat on anything China related right now. That's making this project very difficult. For example, this factory was originally supposed to be in Virginia, but Virginia's governor nixed it. So it went to Michigan instead. And it's drawn a lot of controversy there as well. And at the beginning of this year, CATL was added to a Pentagon blacklist because the government says that they make military applications. CATL denies this. And John Molinar, who is the U.S. representative, who is the chairman of the House Select Committee on China. I'm going to paraphrase this quote here, but he says, if local authorities and the Ford Motor Companies proceed with partnering with CATL, they risk supporting a company linked to the erosion of American manufacturing and the endangerment of the brave men and women who serve our country in the military, and as well as a company linked to ongoing genocide. So clearly not everybody's amped about this project.
Yeah. It just shows how complicated making batteries is these days because, these companies like Ford, they want to ramp up EV production. We need to ramp up battery production in this country. And yet, at the same time, a lot of the IP and a lot of the raw materials for making batteries, for making EV batteries, is all concentrated in China. So what does Ford say about this kind of controversy?
Yeah, I had a great chat with Lisa Drake, who is the Vice President of Technology Platform Programs at EV Systems for Ford. I'd hope to get her as a guest on this show someday. And Lisa Drake has a very pragmatic approach here. She says the agreement with CATL, it's purely a legal agreement. It's a piece of paper, she says, because of the patents. And it's going to be staffed by Ford employees. Like they're going to have CATL employees there later from China to eventually advise and train American workers on how to use this equipment that's being shipped in because it's CATL, patented equipment, right? It's their process to make these batteries. Like this factory takes raw materials from all over the world, some of it from China, but they worked hard to diversify their supply chain. They take that raw materials and they turn them into batteries. And like the process to do that is a CATL patented process. But her take, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, is like, do you want cheaper EVs or not? And she said, it would have taken Ford about a decade to fully scale up LFP technology on its own. And she gave me this great quote when we talked. She goes, it slipped through our grasp to the rest of the world, to battery plants everywhere, but we don't have them. She said, like all over the world, there are LFP battery plants, but not in America.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, this is an opportunity for Ford to lead in this space and to bring the technology back to the US. And I'll just close with saying, she said, if people really knew what was at stake here, they'd say go for it. And meaning like, if the US wants a shot at making affordable EVs and catching up to Chinese car companies and battery companies that have run away with a technology that was born here, these are the kind of deals we're going to have to make, maybe. But that's Ford's take, and clearly a lot of people feel very otherwise.
Right. I think it's important to mention why Ford is talking about all this stuff right now, why I'd imagine they flew a bunch of reporters out to go see a factory that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. Very quickly, I asked them, so, do you have any news here? Like, they're like, no, we're just showing you around. I'm like, I get what's happening. It was exactly what Tim just said. So yeah, go on.
And like, it is that the Republicans' big, beautiful bill is making its way through Congress, this big domestic policy, budget, and tax bill. And one part of it is that it threatens to severely restrict battery manufacturing credits. These credits that provide $35 for each kilowatt hour of battery cells produced in America. Ford executives from Bill Ford to CEO Jim Farley have been calling for these to stay in place. They've been saying it's unfair to take away these credits that like we're banking on when we build factories like this. They're probably going to change, and potentially in a way that hits Ford particularly hard, which is the Republicans are proposing adding these, quote, foreign entity of concern requirements to these credits, which basically means that the point of doing that is to restrict Chinese involvement in these projects. They're very complicated, very restrictive, and the House's version of that bill specifically prohibits licensing agreements like Ford's from receiving those tax credits. So it's Ford could be in a really tough spot if that provision goes through. It basically means, well, if you have a partnership with CATL, like you can't get these tax credits that were really subsidizing this project.
Yeah,
and
I'll add real quick. Axios, Joanne Mueller, she ran the math on that. So this is Axios's numbers, not Ford's. But basically, like they're reporting that the tax credit would have offset nearly 1/3 of this project. There's a $3 billion investment from Ford, and so I'm not very good at math either, but that's $1 billion extra that like Ford has to pay if they lose this tax credits. Like they can do it, but it's gonna hurt a lot. Now I want to be clear that like don't take away from this the idea that Ford only puts Chinese batteries into its EVs. It uses a lot of different kind of battery types, including NCM batteries from South Korean partners like SK On and LG Energy Solution. And we've been super down with Korean batteries until now because like South Korea is a good friend of ours. It's a big ally. And they got into the battery space really early too. But as Lisa Drake told us out there, like the Korean partners didn't get into LFP. Like Hyundai, for example, which is, really a leader in the EV space in a lot of ways, like they're just now getting into LFP stuff too. So like everybody got this wrong but China, and now everybody's having to catch up in creative ways. And the batteries are being made here for Ford. These are going to go into these Skunkworks EVs, which is this new platform that Ford is developing with a secretive team out in California. It's designed to make like an EV platform that's as cheap as a Tesla, cheap as a Chinese EV, and really bring this stuff to, in an affordable way to the masses. And also hopefully if BYD ever starts selling cars in Ohio or whatever, like they have a fighting chance against that. So like a lot's riding on this project.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it seems like regardless, they're pushing forward with it, right? Regardless of whether those battery tax credits go away, they're going to do this. But the difference is like, does it yield actual affordable EVs, or does it yield, slightly cheaper but still expensive EVs, and we'll have to see how that all works out.
Yeah, I think they are quite worried about its future, to be honest. Like, I think I don't think it's going to be just some empty shell if things go really badly. But like Bill Ford, the Ford family scion, the chairman, he's pounded the desk and he's warned that like the anti-China stuff and the losing the tax provision that's really going to threaten big aspects of this project that was supposed to employ a lot of Americans to deliver the technology of the future. So, you know, we've seen a lot of hits to the battery industry over the last few months, but like I think this one is really uniquely vulnerable in particular. So we'll see
Yeah.
what shakes out.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I think it's reasonable without weighing in too much on like my opinions, but like I think it's reasonable for a tax credit to not like Republicans are saying, well, we don't want tax credits that go to that are funded by American taxpayers to be funneled basically to Chinese companies, to companies that
Right.
are outside of America, and specifically that are like, affiliated with one of our adversaries. But I feel like at this point, once it's on the books, changing that credit to make it more restrictive so that a plant that's like halfway built
Yeah.
suddenly doesn't qualify, like that's a pretty tough situation for a company like Ford. How are you
Yeah.
supposed to make decisions around that, right?
Last I'll add is this didn't make it into the story I wrote because it was too long anyway. But I asked Ford about like security and operational security, info security at the plant. And they said, it's technically a joint venture. Like it's Ford owned, Ford operated, Ford employees there, but it's sort of walled off from the rest of Ford. Like everybody there has like a Ford system login, and they'll have like a Blue Oval plant login. Like it's all a closed system, because I guess, to ward off any complaints about IP theft or tapping into other projects or anything else. Like they really have taken steps to ensure that there's security with this particular partner too. So I don't think that has gone unanswered,
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of cheap EVs, or maybe not so cheap EVs, we've been working on some guides here at InsideEVs, and I've been working on one about the cheapest EVs you can buy. And mainly what doing this research made me realize is that there just aren't really any cheap EVs on the market right now. And the ones that are available are all compromised in some way.
Yeah, and it's Tim's research here. He put the numbers in front of me, and we're gonna read through some of them. I was like, man, this is kind of scathing. And this is we realize how much of this industry in America has been helped by the EV tax credit and cheap EV lease deals, which, like I said,
Yeah.
I take advantage of one now, and I'm getting like a comically low monthly price for a car that at full sticker I could not have afforded. So just, I'll always do this kind of some bullshit math there, but hey, it's a deal's a deal, right? But yeah, why don't you take us through your findings on the allegedly cheap EVs that are out there right now?
And on the flip side, like it just shows how much this industry has been held back, how much this market has been held back by cars that are just like too expensive, that are just $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more expensive than the same gas version, right? So I want to talk about how this might change in the future, but first, so the top 10 or the bottom 10 cheapest, there's only one that retails for under $30,000. This is all including destination fees, and that's the Nissan Leaf at around $29,000.
And real quick, that's the old one. We're not talking about that
Old
new
one.
fancy one we were talking about last podcast with the Tesla port and the nice teal and the cool shape and everything. We're talking about the old Leaf that is, came out in 2017 and has a fast charging port that is, dead technology. So
Yeah, that's ancient.
That'll run you $29,000 if you want to go that route.
And then I'll just run through the others quickly. Fiat 500e, Chevy Equinox EV, Hyundai Kona electric, Toyota BZ4X, Hyundai Ioniq 6, Subaru Solterra, Ford Mustang Mach-E, and then those are all the ones that are under $40,000. And then the rounded out 9 and 10, Kia Niro EV, Nissan Ariya. Those are both a little over $40,000.
the list that Tim just read, starting with the Fiat, going up to the Aria, ran the gamut from 32 grand to $41,000. And I think probably of those ones you listed, probably the strongest deal overall in there is the Chevy Equinox EV. That's 319 miles of range for $34,295, which is why it won our breakthrough award last year, and it continues to be a great deal. And
Yeah.
even if you get like the Ioniq 6 is on here, but it's not like the battery you want. It's the kind of like fleet special stripped down battery, $39,000 for 240 miles of range, which I would not consider to be an exceptional deal.
Yeah, it stinks.
Yeah.
And all these are
Yeah.
before any tax credits. Like I think
Right.
tax credits make the Equinox even better, right?
Yeah.
You know, high 20s for something with over 300 miles of range. I don't know. Anything else stick out to you? The Equinox is definitely the best one. Are there any others on this list that you would recommend?
I think there's some people who would point out that the average new car in America somehow costs $47,000. It's kind of held steady there for the last few months.
Yeah.
Average new EV is about 50,000 or over. So there are people that say, "Oh, that's a pretty good deal comparatively." But I would argue that's just because the entire field is so out of whack, and that like $47,000 for a new car, like that is a crazy post-pandemic phenomenon. It wasn't like this even a few years ago. So, and I think that like, yeah, a lot of these are still outside the realm of what most people would consider affordable. And I think I don't know, 30, 35 is kind of the cutoff there. I think I would say for most Americans, like and anything under 30 these days, you're getting a hell of a deal. 35, it's like, okay, well, not bad compared to everything else, but that's still a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's it I didn't realize quite how bad I mean, we talk obviously all the time about how expensive EVs are. But this list was a little bit of a shocker. I think one question to ask is like, how much better is this going to get and when? It's already been getting better, right?
Yeah.
Like a few years ago, all the options pretty much were like, Audi e-tron and Porsche Taycan and
Yeah.
Teslas, things that were all just like luxury cars. Now at
Rich
least you
people
have these
spaceships.
rich people spaceships. Now you have mainstream brands getting into the mix. I think that without all the policy changes, things would have looked a little better probably over the next couple of years. Like if EV sales were still just like absolutely booming and the tax credits were here and tariffs were not, I think we might see a lot more cheap EVs coming. One analysis that I saw found that over 70% of EVs launching in the US by 2026 that have price tags attached to that announcement, it's over $50,000. So which not great. But there are a few coming in the next couple of years that do hit that 35K mark. Like what are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm really glad you pointed out the progress that's being made here. Like in the span of like 5 years or less, like these prices have dropped dramatically. And like that's the trend
Yeah.
we're seeing. And largely, before I go into the stuff I'm excited about, it's because of battery costs. As you build more batteries in America, you localize the supply chain. We build cheaper and better batteries and build them out. These cars will get cheaper because the battery accounts for the vast majority of the costs on your electric vehicle. And that's why like projects, the Ford one are important. So what am I excited about? They haven't announced when it's going to come to the United States yet or where it will be built, but there's the Kia EV3, which, they've kind of touted like a $35,000 price tag ish for that. I drove that in South Korea last year and really liked it. There's the new Chevy Bolt coming out this year. GM says it's going to be, the most affordable EV in its class. The EV, to get back to Kia, the EV3 has a counterpart and as a sedan, the EV4. I'm not sure I even want to mention the long-awaited cheaper Tesla because that's like this that's as much a holy grail as like as solid state batteries or something at this point. But there's supposedly that happening. But and then the new Nissan Leaf too, like is a significantly better deal than the car it replaces. So like there is some real momentum here. You got one in particular you're pretty amped about, right?
Yeah, for me it's got to be the Slate truck. I just think that thing is so cool. it has been, in my years reporting on this, like it's very rare, maybe never, that I see a new EV get launched or revealed that I could legitimately see myself buying. Um, even an EV3 at like 35 grand, I'm like, I don't know. Am I really gonna spend am I gonna spend $35,000 on a new car? I don't know. But the slate starting at 27 grand, they say, plus a tax credit, maybe bringing it down to around 20. I mean, if that lives on long enough, I doubt it. Um, but yeah, the slate is just super cool. Like I would have to probably add the bigger battery, which would raise the price a little bit to get it up to like 200 something miles of range. But as far as I can tell, that's like the most, I don't know, there aren't car companies that are saying, yeah, we're going to launch a mid 20s EV in the next couple of years. Like
Yeah.
I can't think of any. Some of them are like ambiguously cheap. Maybe the Bolt maybe will be in that high 20s range. But it seems like it's going to be a while before we have like, equivalents to like the Nissan Sentra or whatever, like the real dirt cheap cars as an electric option.
Yeah, or we change the rules and we let the Chinese in. They just start
Yeah.
dumping, BYD seagulls on us for like 18 grand, and then it's like really game over for a lot of these companies. I'll add too. This is definitely in a class above what we just talked about, but I think it shows the progress here. I'm excited for the Rivian R2. Like they're targeting
Yeah.
45 grand for that, which is still more expensive than these cars we've been covering here, but like. I don't know, the last Rivian truck I drove was $96,000. And so like you're cutting that more than in half, like from your average Rivian now too. And then there's the R3 and R3X after that they say is going to be even cheaper. I my guess is under 40, 35 something for those. So like progress is happening. And I tell people who are anti-EV, like, you probably are going to own an electric car someday. They scoff at me and say, no, like this, as this builds out, it'll come to everybody eventually. Just we're just not seeing it as much as we'd like right now.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, already, even if you're buying one of those, 40K EVs, good chance that you're paying less over the course of that vehicle in like terms of total cost of ownership. You're probably paying less than for a gas car just because charging at home is cheap. You don't have oil changes. You don't have as much repairs. So I think once the price also comes to like comparable levels to gas, it's going to be pretty hard for people to not go EV, right? As long as there's charging infrastructure, et cetera, like once the choice is, okay, I either have a gas car or an EV at the same price, one of them costs me way less to fuel and way less to maintain over time, like tons of people who didn't think they were going to buy an EV are going to go for that because Americans love saving money.
All right, now it's time for Plus Minus, our segment where we talk about who's up and who's down in the EV world. Tim, what you got for me this week?
I have a plus, and it is the used EV market.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, this is it. So if you want a cheap EV, like you're gonna buy used, and the good thing is that there are a lot more appealing used EVs hitting the market. So in Q2, my plus is in Q2 a milestone over 100,000 used EVs were sold in America, way more than in any quarter ever, which is really encouraging to see, especially when the rest of the market is like kind of slowing down. This is a part of it that is really picking up steam fast.
Yeah, we had a story the other day, like we've certainly covered the reaction and recession to Elon Musk lately, but like if you want a hell of a deal, a used Model 3 is the way to go. Like, I mean, a year old, couple years old, we're seeing like mid 20s, low 20s for those things, and all things equal, like you're getting a lot of car with one of those. And it's like it is getting cheap enough to where, because so many people sold them off in response to just the backlash against Elon and everything. It's like they're getting so cheap where it's like it might be tempting for some people to be like, I can get one of those and just like the screw Elon bumper sticker or something. Like that's a heck of a deal if you're willing to get past some of the more negative press he's had lately, I guess. So just bear that
Yeah,
in mind.
I mean, I'm considering it. And
I,
the other thing I'll say is So that 100,000 EVs, that's from Cox Automotive. The same report says that 1 million EVs have been leased since 2022, and those are all going to start coming off lease 2026, 2027. So like, get ready for just like a cheap EV boom in the next couple of years as all these off lease cars hit the market.
I'm glad you had the courage to mention it first. I'm also considering just getting a dirt cheap used Model 3. Like, screw it. Dad loves a deal. You know, what are you going to do? I have a minus for you this week, and my minus is Dodge, the brand Dodge, specifically the Dodge Hornet plug-in hybrid, which was my rental car in Detroit, and I hated it. And I wanted to regale you with this story in closing because this was one of the most loathsome new cars I have driven in a very long time. Gas, electric, hybrid, or otherwise. I don't think I've hated.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because like, I feel like most cars these days are just like pretty decent, but it's always interesting when you find one that's like, yeah, not it.
They're supposed to be, but every now and then you find something that's a real dud, and that for me that was it. There's always a Dodge, yeah. So because I'm a civilized person who lives in the 21st century, I rented a car in Detroit and I asked for an electric vehicle, just because it's what I prefer. The city was baking from climate change, and I know how to deal with them. And I like seeing how the EV rental process goes, just so I know what it's like. So I of course asked for an EV. Like, we don't have any EVs for you. There's a lot over there full of electric vehicles. I'm like, let me guess, you've been charging these things all day, have you? Okay. They're like, all right, well, don't worry, sir. We'll get you a Prius. I'm like, cool. Close enough. Like, you know, sure. Yeah. I don't care. Like, yeah. And then they're like, oh, you're not getting a Prius. So you're getting this, the Dodge Hornet. And I'm like, can I at least like get a hybrid or something? Cause it's what I reserved. It's like, oh no, it is a hybrid. And the guy pops open the port and he's like, you plug it in here. And I look, and of course its battery is like completely dead. So let's start there. Budget rental in the Detroit airport. Like, you biff that one. So I get this thing with this dead battery and the range on it, because gas cars have range now, which is hilarious. 230 miles. And it's like, come on, man. Like I drive an electric Kia and it ranged like I would dog walk this thing. So it drives terribly because it's a 1.3 liter engine with a PHEV. And the reason that the Dodge Hornet exists is because it's not even a Dodge. It's an Alfa Romeo. It's like the kind of cars that like Europeans love, like tiny engine and a PHEV. And they sell it in America for, you know, so that Alfa Romeo can meet their corporate average fuel economy rules. And then Dodge is like, oh no, we need that thing too, because our cars also are nowhere near meeting our corporate average fuel economy rules. So they hijack it, they throw some Dodge badges on it, and now this Alfa Romeo Tonale is a Dodge Hornet. And it's just this thrashy, nasty little thing. I mean, just this rough powertrain, those horrible rental cloth seats. I mean, just a really unrefined, uncouth experience. It needed alignment too, which is annoying. It was like somebody definitely like hopped a curb in this thing too. So I'm just like, I had this abysmal car, and I'm like, I'm gonna take it back and ask for something different. And I'm like, no, I don't have time. Like, I got a tight schedule. I'm in Detroit, so I deal with this thing all week. I had to charge it like once for like an hour, and that gave me like a quarter charge, and it was okay, but didn't really get great fuel economy or anything. And then I find out, what does one of these things cost, right? For like the PHEV Dodge Hornet hybrid, you're looking at like starting price of about $44,000.
Oh,
So yeah, you talk about unaffordable cars like this thing. I mean, just like, I didn't have time to, but like I wanted to drive to Auburn Hills to like yell at someone at Stellantis and just like ask them like when the new CEO is going to make cars that are good and not bad. But
yeah,
if
like,
you're listening,
have you guys driven this thing? Can
yeah,
I show you this thing?
yeah, like I'd like to sit down, you know, with this new CEO, like, so like I think the problem that you have is the cars are bad instead of good. Like, how are you going to address that? Yeah. So anyway, if you're listening to this, do not buy a Dodge Hornet hybrid, and try not to rent one if you could get away with it. I was so mad. There were all these nice Hyundais and Volvo electrics. They had a bunch of Mach-E's. I just wanted a Mach-E or something. I'd have taken the Prius.
So they were just all not charged?
Just all not charged, sitting there dead, man. Yeah, you know, sad stuff. Anyway, Thanks for listening to the Plugged In podcast from Inside EVs. We'll be back with more yelling and screaming next Friday. Today's show was produced by Michael Perkins and is brought to you by the Motorsport Network.
Make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts and send us your questions about the EV world to podcast@InsideEVs.com. See you next time.